It was a typical autumn afternoon, with golden leaves slowly falling down the streets of New York, when the world was stunned by news that seemed impossible. Donald Trump, a man known for his controversial positions and his unusual journey in politics, had done something no one expected. He, the former president of the United States, the construction magnate, was creating a billion-dollar fund aimed at helping immigrants in vulnerable situations. The winds of change blew strongly that day, bringing a sense of transformation to those who needed it most. The announcement did not come through a grand ceremony or a monumental speech, but through a simple, direct message filled with emotion. Deep down, this decision seemed to have been inspired by something much deeper than just a political maneuver. A change of heart. Donald Trump was not an ordinary person. His trajectory was marked by unquestionable victories, but also by controversies and criticisms. His name was associated with uncontrollable wealth and a policy that, for many, seemed insensitive and solely self-serving. However, few knew that behind the facade of the successful businessman and the strong-speaking politician, there was a man with his own internal struggles, doubts, and reflections. Since his youth, Donald was exposed to a life of privilege but also challenges. Raised in an environment of extreme competitiveness, he always knew what it was like to fight for a place in the sun. His businesses thrived, but they were also the target of numerous criticisms. His massive investments in real estate and international business brought him global visibility, but also the constant pressure of being seen as an example, something he always seemed to avoid. However, something began to change in his mind in recent years. At the height of his public life, Trump had the opportunity to travel to various parts of the world, learning the stories of people who had left their homes in search of a better life. The suffering of immigrants, their daily struggles, and the difficulties of securing a dignified life began to deeply resonate with Trump. He had always been a man who believed in the American dream, but he wondered why so many people were unable to achieve that reality, even though they worked hard. It was during this period of introspection that Donald began to change his perception of what helping truly meant. For him, the solution was not in speeches or temporary measures. He wanted something more lasting, something that could truly transform lives. The idea of creating a billion-dollar fund to support immigrants was born from a genuine desire to give back and do something meaningful. The announcement came on a rainy morning when Donald Trump surprised the world with a historic press conference. The setting was unusual, almost symbolic. Trump was accompanied by representatives from renowned NGOs, immigrant community leaders, and civil rights defenders. The rain fell heavily, but the atmosphere inside the hall was charged with expectation and tension. It was the kind of event that, at first glance, could be interpreted as yet another political move, but what followed was something much more surprising. We are creating a billion-dollar fund to support those who, like many of us, came to America in search of a better future. This fund will be dedicated to helping immigrants integrate with dignity and have a real chance to thrive in this country, Trump said, in a solemn tone but filled with sincerity. He paused, seemingly reflecting on the weight of his own words. Our goal is to ensure that these people, who are often marginalized and face insurmountable obstacles, have the chance to write their own success story. These words, spoken at an apparently genuine moment, deeply moved public opinion, dividing the nation. The reaction was immediate and mixed. While some journalists and observers were stunned by the seriousness of the commitment, others began to question the validity of the proposal. They wondered if this was just another strategy to change his image, or if it would truly mark a change in the country's immigration policies. The scope of the fund, estimated at over $10 billion, seemed promising, but many still doubted the true motivation behind the gesture. Meanwhile, immigrants and their communities celebrated, albeit with reservations. For many of them, this was an unprecedented opportunity. America, historically known as a country of immigration, seemed to be offering something more concrete, a real chance to participate. Organizations that had long fought for immigrant rights recognized the magnitude of what was being announced. Although some expressed concerns about the fund's management, there was doubt about how the resources would be distributed and whether the support would materialize effectively. Although Trump's speech was wrapped in a mantle of sincerity, the big question lingering in the air was, What was the true reason behind this decision? Political observers began to speculate on the underlying motivations for this move. Some suggested that Trump, in his relentless pursuit of re-election, was trying to gain the trust of immigrants, a growing and decisive demographic group at the polls. Was it an attempt to change his image from an anti-immigration politician to a defender of immigrant rights? However, an increasing number of political analysts pointed to another possibility. Trump, as a businessman, understood better than anyone the power of branding and narrative. Creating a billion-dollar fund dedicated to the inclusion and integration of immigrants could be a smart strategy to ensure his image as someone concerned with America in a broader sense, as well as generating a legacy of generosity that would be hard to ignore by his opponents. In this way, he began to position himself as the leader of a new type of conservatism, more inclusive and less polarizing. There was still another aspect to consider: the movement of large corporations and investors who were beginning to pressure political leaders to adopt more welcoming policies toward immigrants. The billion-dollar fund could be a response to this movement, seeking to ensure that immigrants, instead of being seen as a threat, were viewed as an engine of economic growth. Multinational companies and startups were beginning to realize that the immigrant workforce was vital for the future of the American economy, especially in sectors like technology, healthcare, and agriculture. In the months following the announcement, Trump's team worked diligently to shape the fund. A committee was formed, consisting of businessmen, academics, immigration experts, and human rights advocates. The idea was for the fund to be used strategically, providing grants and resources to initiatives that would facilitate the integration of immigrants into American society. One of the main focuses of the fund would be support for education and professional training, areas in which many immigrants face significant barriers. English language programs, legal guidance, and vocational training courses were among the first to be implemented. Additionally, the fund would also be used to finance projects promoting cultural and social inclusion, helping to combat prejudice and discrimination against immigrants. However, the implementation process turned out to be more complex than expected. The bureaucracy involved in managing such a large-scale fund was challenging, and criticisms soon arose about the slow processes and lack of transparency in some areas. Civil rights organizations began to question how the resources were being distributed, fearing that the most needy segments of the immigrant population were being left out. The media began covering these issues, bringing to light stories of immigrants who, despite being qualified, could not access the opportunities provided by the fund. Furthermore, there was an increase in political polarization around the initiative. While Trump supporters applauded the effort as a positive step toward building a more inclusive society, his critics saw it as an attempt to manipulate public opinion to his advantage. In political speeches, the creation of the fund was often cited as an attempt to clean up Trump's image, but many said he still had more to do to correct the policies that had harmed immigrants during his administration. On the other hand, immigrant communities were divided. Many saw the creation of the fund as a unique opportunity to achieve stability and prosperity in the United States. Community organizations, which had fought for the inclusion of immigrants for years, began adapting their strategies to align with the new program, creating workshops and specific training to guide immigrants on how to access the benefits of the fund. However, others within these communities remained cautious. Distrust of the federal government, especially among those who had faced deportations, arrests, and family separations, did not disappear easily. For many, the creation of the fund seemed like a one-off action, a political strategy rather than a real change in the government's attitude toward immigrants. As time passed, the impact of the fund became increasingly visible, though not uniformly. Some areas, especially in large cities, began to see significant improvements in the quality of life for immigrants, while others, more remote and with less access to resources, continued to face challenges. As the years went by, Trump's billion-dollar fund became a recurring topic in political discussions. Some saw it as an example of innovation in public policy, while others considered it just another image strategy. But one thing was clear: the story of the creation of the billion-dollar fund would be remembered as an important moment in U.S. politics. It reflected the complex social, economic, and political issues related to immigration and the future of the country. The real question hanging in the air was, would this gesture from Trump truly change the lives of immigrants forever? Or would it just be another attempt to score political points in a complicated game? Time surely would bring the answers. In the months following the announcement, the fund was implemented with impressive speed. Businesses, philanthropists, and even other politicians began to join the project, each with a desire to contribute in some way to the cause. Trump, for his part, made sure to closely follow every part of the process. He traveled to different states, visited shelters and immigrant support centers, spoke with those on the front lines, and listened to stories of overcoming adversity that deeply moved him. It was at one of these meetings that Trump had an experience that would change his view forever. He met Maria, a young mother of two who had crossed the border in search of a better life for her family. Maria, who had faced countless adversities during her journey, was deeply moved to learn that the former president was behind the creation of the fund. "I never imagined that someone like you, someone who has been so far from us, could understand our struggles," she said, with tears in her eyes. Those words echoed powerfully in Trump's mind. He had never realized the depth of the pain and suffering so many families were facing. From that moment on, he knew his mission was just beginning. He was no longer just creating a fund, he was creating a V. But like every great journey, Trump's billion-dollar fund was not without its challenges. There were financial obstacles, political resistance, and even fierce criticism from his opponents. Many questioned whether he truly had the ability to do something meaningful or if it was just a strategic move. And undoubtedly, the questioning did not stop. However, with each challenge overcome, Trump became more determined to keep going. The billion-dollar fund grew, and with it, new success stories began to emerge. Immigrants who had once been on the margins of society were now starting businesses, achieving quality education, and actively contributing to the growth of the nation. The impact of the fund was undeniable. News of its victory spread, and Trump became not only a name associated with real estate empires, but also a symbol of transformation for immigrants who had once been forgotten by society. Then, in the end, an even more surprising piece of news emerged. Donald Trump had decided to dedicate a significant part of his personal fortune to ensure that the fund would not only be sustainable, but also continue to grow and impact future generations. He announced in a press conference that he would make a final and powerful gesture. He would donate all of his share of profits from his real estate businesses to the fund, creating a solid foundation so that aid to immigrants would never stop. This decision marked the pinnacle of his transformation journey. The man who had, until then, been seen by many as a polarizing figure, now became a genuine advocate for a cause that could change the fate of thousands. For many, this was more than a political shift. It was an act of humanity, proof that even those who started with divergent views could come together in the name of something greater. The world watched, stunned, as Trump, the man many considered a symbol of toughness, transformed into an icon of change and solidarity. This gesture from Donald Trump will undoubtedly leave an indelible mark on history, and its repercussions will be felt for generations. He proved that even those who seem most distant from our realities can, in some way, connect to the pain and suffering of others, and decide to act to change things. If you were moved by this story and believe that change is possible, subscribe to the channel and follow other emotional videos about the journeys of great celebrities who transformed the world with their actions. Leave your comment and like so more people can discover these inspiring stories. Let's spread these messages of hope and transformation, because together we can make a difference. Don't miss the next stories.